The other side of the button.
Thank you, Sam. Right, it's 7 o'clock. Good evening, welcome. It is the PFD meeting, Oban Wigston Council. Thank you all for attending. Apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor. Beg your pardon, Sam, I need to do the statement first. In accordance with the Openness of Local Bodies Regulations 2014, this meeting is being live streamed and may otherwise be recorded, filmed or communicated on other media platforms. The recording of this meeting will be made available on the Council's YouTube channel shortly after the meeting. Both councillors and officers in attendance are reminded to make full use of and to speak clearly into the microphones available at all times. A reminder that mobile phones be put on silent mode. Those present at the meeting should refrain from taking telephone calls. Thank you. Right, apologies for absence. I've received Councillor Ridley.
Thank you. Additional apologies from Councillors David Lloydall, Naveed Allen, Frank Broadley, Sharon Morris, Linda Broadley, Liz Darling and Pretty Joshy, Chair. And Councillor Boyce has his hand raised on the sheets.
Technically, Chair, it's my apologies because I'm attending virtually.
So he's in attendance, Chair, but not
in a voting.
Voting capacity, yes.
Thank you, Sam. Any substitutes?
No substitutes, Chair.
Declarations of interest? Minutes of the previous meeting, may I sign? Thank you. Action list from the previous meeting, but there are none. Petitions and deputations.
None received, Chair.
Item agenda 7 then, corporate debt policy. Bev, would you like to introduce this?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So this council, like other councils, collects a amount of income on behalf of itself and its preceptors. The corporate debt policy sets out the council's approach to collecting and recovering debt to meet legislative requirements, to ensure consistency in approach, and to provide effective and efficient processes to maximise the revenue income streams for the council, whilst being sensitive to the needs of the debtors. In September 2022, the committee considered a number of proposed changes for inclusion in the revised policy. Those comments from the committee have been taken into account and are reported on in section 2 of the report. The revised policy incorporating the changes are attached as Appendix 1. The changes incorporated into the revised policy are to allow for payment arrangements to be set up prior to the issue of a summons in exceptional circumstances, the standardised income and expenditure forms to be used wherever possible, to allow for recovery of fixed legal costs and to consider recovery of full litigation of costs where applicable on a case-by-case basis. Standardised write-off reasons have been identified and other small amendments have been made to the policy to update information. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Bev. Just before we start, just on that particular item you've mentioned, Agenda 2, update on changes. The word consideration is used an awful lot. And it seems to be lacking firmness in my view. I was hoping for something a little more firm in how we deal with some particular issues. Are you confident that going forward this will be satisfactory?
Yeah, I mean, each of the items that were sort of brought forward to the committee have been considered. And we've not made amendments to policy. It does state that we've not amended the policy to take that action forward. So there are 3 items where we've amended the policy to take those actions forward. So that's at 2.6, 2.7, 2.8. We've updated the policy.
Okay, that's fine, Bev, thank you. Councillor Hack.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few comments or questions, whatever you want to call them. The first one, 2.1, it says not to charge interest. Can we consider charging a penalty rather than interest on the debt? Is that a possibility? So it deters people from dragging it on, and it gives them some incentive to pay the debt earlier than what they're going to?
Mr Gill?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of interest or penalty, the only time that you can make such demands is if the legislation permits it, and the majority of our debt is in respect of council tax and business rates, and the legislation does not permit interest to be charged or penalties unless we are able to move the liability into the county court. So we are quite active in terms of charging orders, and we can convert a liability order from the Magistrates Court into a charging order at the county court. That does attract interest, but it's very complicated. As a general rule, you cannot charge interest through the county court on a debt unless it's more than £5,000, and there are various stages within the process. There's a money judgment, and then there is a judgment debt. You can charge for one, you can't charge for the other, and it becomes extremely complicated because over a long period, you're looking at different times. You've got to calculate the days accurately, and to be honest, it's quite often not worth doing it because the amount of time that you spend calculating the interest is outweighed by the cost to the officers.
Want to come back, Councillor Hack?
Yeah, it does say that.
Microphone.
It does say that charging interest is one of the options available to the council. So, is that not correct then?
It very much depends on each of the individual debt. A sundry debt you would recover through the money claims online, and again, if it's more than £5,000, you would be able to charge interest. A council tax debt, which is covered by a liability order, or a business rate debt, which is covered by a liability order, does not attract interest or a penalty.
Okay, can we look at if it doesn't involve any hardship, at least charging base rate on those where we can?
We can certainly look at it, but as I've said, there'll be very few and far between.
Okay, thank you. And the next one is 2.4, where it says, due to administrative burden, the periodic review cannot take place. How often were you suggesting that this review should take place? If not 3 times or 4 times, can it be done once a year? And then my next question is 2.5, to collect the debt. Can we share the cost with anyone, or is it possible to employ an agency to collect debt on our behalf and then share the cost with them, or pay them 10% or whatever we need to pay a minimum to collect the debt for us if we can't do it in-house? Is that a possibility?
Would like to answer that one.
We were talking about 2.5 in respect of the repayment holidays, where we've talked about the administration burden of creating it.
That's the review I was talking about.
Steve.
And sharing costs in terms of collecting debt.
In terms of the review, it's felt where the payment arrangement's been put in place, and it's going ahead, and they're paying in terms of the payment arrangement. But they're reviewing the payment arrangement won't really give us much benefit, because they're actually going ahead and complying with what we've put in place and the arrangement that's been put in place. So actually, by reviewing those, we're not necessarily going to get any benefit out of it. It'll just carry on continuing to be repaid at the same level. So that's why we felt it wasn't worth putting that action in place.
Okay.
It is where those payments are being made in terms of the arrangement that's been put in place. They're being kept up to date.
Okay, is that in one of the action points, and it does say that due to administrative burden, we can't deliver any change. So that's why I suggested, can we make it less frequent? But in terms of collecting the actual debt, do we employ any external agencies?
Yes.
Sorry, if I can just come back on that. Yes, we do employ external agencies, Council Act. They're called enforcement agents, formerly known as bailiffs. And obviously they do it because they get their income from charging the debtors, and then they collect money and pass it to us. Also, in terms of other debts, sundry debts, for instance, that there is no liability order for, we do actually outsource them to the same enforcement agent, and they will go and endeavour to collect on our behalf, and they will get a fee for doing that out of any of the monies that's recovered.
Do you want to come back, Councillor Hack?
No.
Sorry, Tracy, did you wish to?
I think part of the question Councillor Hack may have had, I'm not sure, was around whether or not we can share the burden of administration of collection, potentially of council tax and business rates, with the people that benefit from the collection of that council tax business rates, i.e. on free-setting partners. I believe the answer is no, it's the statutory responsibility for that's based on us as a billing authority to collect that money. And I think, well, I do know that we'll be recompensed through settlement funding assessment, which is basically the local government funding system, so we'll be recompensed through that. So no, we can't, approach our preceptors for sharing in any administration expense, is the answer.
Okay. Councillor Bentley was next.
Thank you, Chair, but Tracy just answered the question that I
Jeffrey.
asked. Thank you.
Councillor Bolter.
Chair, just a couple of questions. First of all, on page 33, one to execution. How have we used that in the last 12 months? And the other question is about the list of vulnerability. It's a very extensive list, isn't it? On page 17, you go to page 18. Does that mean these people will never be pursued for the debts they're owed, or do you wait for a period of time? Is it substance abuse? I don't see that's the reason for people not paying their debts, personally.
Okay, thank you. Two questions there. Warrant of executions, have we issued any?
I'm not sure of the answer to that. We'd have to find out from the service area, the revenues and benefits area, and report back to you.
Okay, thank you. And the list of vulnerable people, is that prescribed or is that something we've come up with ourselves?
I believe it's a list we've defined ourselves. It doesn't mean that we're not going to pursue and recover debts from them. It just means that we take into consideration their circumstances.
Can we somewhere insert, Chair, that this doesn't...
Going on, please.
This doesn't mean that these people will never have to pay the debt, that may pay it over a period of time. If I was a member of the public reading this, I think, oh well, if I say I've got a language difficulty, I need never pay the council tax. Or if I'm expecting, which doesn't last forever, I'll be pursued. So it just needs tidying up a bit.
I think each case is on its own merits, Councillor Bolter, so I think everything's taken into consideration, and I would think we make a fair and proportioned settlement when we deal with that.
I hope so.
Bev, did you want to, anybody?
On page 6, there is a paragraph that does say the council may recover debts from persons who are vulnerable, but we will take steps to ensure the actions are reasonable in terms of the circumstances.
That's fine.
Councillor Geoffrey Kaufman.
My question was relating to the responsibility of collecting for other authorities has been answered.
Thank you. Are there any other? Councillor Lloydell?
Thank you, Chair. council tax, so you're going to take enforcement action. I'm just going through a scenario, and the question comes at the end. So therefore, you're actually acting on behalf of the other preceptors, aren't you? Technically. Because that is ours, theirs, etc. So that we're bearing the cost of all of that. And then when you say succeed and get that debt back, you then have to pay the other preceptors because that's what it's all about. Why then do we have to bear all the cost of that? It doesn't seem fair to me that this authority bears all the cost of the enforcement. You get that money back. That money back is not just ours, isn't it? It's the preceptors as well. Does that make sense? It doesn't seem fair that we bear the cost of it, but you don't get any recompense back for the cost that you've outlaid. Okay,
if I may, we do get recompense back, but it's not quite as overt as a line in our budget where our precept holders pay us an amount. It's quite obscure, and it's through what is called settlement funding assessment, or SFA, which is how the local government funding system works. There is a specific area in the way that business rates is calculated that has a cost of collection deduction. So it takes from the gross rates that are collected on business rates. Thank you. So on the gross business rates that are collected in over Wigston, which I think is about 34 million. Yeah. Before
karaoke night.
Someone's not happy, I'm leaving.
You go.
Sorry. Council tax is 38 million collected. Business rates is 12 million collected across the borough. Before that is divvied up between central government, between Leicestershire County Council, before Leicestershire Fire and Rescue. There is a whole range of deductions. One of those deductions is cost of collection, which kind of stays with this council. And then we divvy out the amounts of who has their share of those business rates. So we are recompensed in that sense for business rates. For council tax, I think there's an even more obscure mechanism by which we are compensated by being a billing authority, which is through the local government funding system. So I appreciate the intention of the question, but all billing authorities across England are, running this way and are compensated through the funding system, although it's just not as transparent as we might think it ought to be.
One more from me, have we had a situation where we're about to have interpreters in any case? And if we have we budgeted for that scenario?
Yeah, there are occasions where we do need to use interpreters, and yes, we do have a budget provision for the cost of interpreting, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Hack.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to Councillor Lloydell's question, Tracy did mention that we do get the cost back. If you do get the cost back, why are we not a bit more aggressive in going after these debtors and recovering that debt and employing staff where it's needed? Because far too many points here said due to administrative burden, we can't do this, we can't do that. I just think that we should be a bit more aggressive in pursuing our debt if we can recover that cost from the other preceptors.
We can't recover our entire costs. We're just given an allowance from central government, as Tracy said, either in terms of the cost of collection or a grant allocation that's seen towards the cost of the council tax administration. So it doesn't vary depending on what action you take. We're just given that as a contribution towards delivering that service to the billing authority.
Are there any more speakers? Now, I think the question possibly there was, if we had more resources, could we collect more debt?
It's a difficult, possibly the answer is yes. However, there will come a tipping point where we would end up, spending more than it would be economic to pursue those debts. But within, the constraints of the organisation, within the constraints of the team, we're doing everything in terms of collecting debts that we're able to. And I think we're possibly tipping into the next agenda item here, Chair, but in terms of that collection rate, we do have a correct collection rate action plan, and all efforts are concentrated on improving that collection rate.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, the recommendation is to revise corporate debt policy be approved. I'll move it. Seconder.
Second that.
Councillor Lloydell, all those in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. Agenda item 8, collection rate improvement plan. That's Bev again, please.
Thank you, Chair. The collection rate improvement plan was established in September 2022. It identified actions to be implemented to improve the team efficiency and the collection rate of the council tax and business rates. The original improvement plan identified 14 actions, of which 2 actions have been fully completed. 3 actions are on target to be completed by the original target date of the 31st of March. 9 actions require revised extended target dates. 3 of those are now due to complete by the 31st of March 2023, and 6 have moved to completion in next financial year, and 2 subsequent new actions have been added. Where target dates have been extended, this is due to the recruitment to senior officers within the team taking place, who will then lead on the specific actions. It's also in recognition of the pressures on the services in this year in terms of delivering energy support schemes and providing reconciliation and post-assurance on the previous grant schemes. The actions identified in the improvement plan will need to be embedded and be in place for a period of time before it has an impact on the collection rate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Bev. I'll move this report. Well, no, it's for noting actually, but I just have one question on page 52. It's in one of the charts. It's reference number 11. Implement a risk-based visiting schedule. The target date has passed. Have we implemented that? I do find it an area of concern that we don't have an up-to-date picture of the businesses within the borough. We don't know who's operating, who's ceased operating, who we've missed. That is a concern, and will a risk-based visiting schedule remedy that?
So the target date has been moved now to the 31st of May, and that's to allow for the senior business rates officer to be appointed and become into post, and they will then manage the visiting officer and develop that programme of visits once they're in post. So that's why the target dates had to be moved. And they will devise a schedule, a risk-based schedule to go out and visit all the businesses. So it'll be targeted to visit all the businesses throughout the borough.
Okay, thank you. So can we have an update on that at some point in the future, please?
Yes, you can, Chair.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Lloydell.
Yes, just very quickly, not for now, but it just springs to mind when we talk about business units and offices pulling schedule visits. Since the pandemic, obviously, people working from home, there's a lot of cottage industry set up, people working from home, which may not attract business rates, but will attract a certain status of the building that they're using as an office or whatever. I suppose we haven't got any inclination, or won't have any inclination of whether or not how many these cottage type industries have been set up. I know there's 2 or 3 that I think about what's maybe think about this, working in the garages and one thing or another, whether they are registered. Not for now, but it's just something perhaps to think about for the future, because that's could be being missed. There'll be a change of whatever it is on the property for a start, and there'll be a tax implication on the property as well. It's just good to remind us of something like the sea visit last week. The industry day going up in Paris, which was quite entrepreneurial, really. But so, just a comment, something to think of in the future.
Okay, thank you for that. No question there. Anybody else wish to ask a question? Councillor Hack.
Thanks, Chair. Actually looking where I marked. There was a comment or action point to actively go out and inspect new businesses opening in the borough. Is that something that we are starting to do, or has that not been done in the past? Do we wait for the actual business owners to let us know that they've opened in the borough to send them an NDR, or how does the process work?
I believe we'd get a notification from the valuation office.
Thank you, Tracy. I had difficulty hearing that.
I think we get a notification to the valuation office of a new business premises opening. Does that answer your question?
Kind of does, but do we actually go and monitor which businesses have closed, which businesses have opened, and to send them a bill or prompt them to actually notify us and get the up-to-date bill, so we don't miss out on, new businesses might be opening and closing at the time that or we might not get notified by the evaluation agency, or the businesses might not tell us at all, and we're missing out on that potential income there.
So if I may, Chair, so this talks about a risk-based visiting schedule, and this is to pick those businesses up that fall through the cracks, right? We rely on changing business premises, so usually estate agents will, advise when there is an outgoing business. They may well pass on the details to us as they are sort of signing out and letting us know that they're moving on. They may well pass over the details of the incoming business name and details. Obviously, reference evaluation office agency in terms of that information. We do, although we don't have the risk-based visiting schedule completed at the moment in terms of that being live, we do share intelligence across teams, so part of the economic regeneration team. So we obviously Geoffrey Kenyon when he was here, and we're just about to interview for his replacement. Geoffrey would, take back that sort of business intelligence and share that with the revenues and benefits team. And we do that across different teams across the council as well. So we do share that, I suppose, what's happening in that intelligence. I think, going back to your point, Councillor Lloydell, if you have information that you think that we are not party to, or that we won't receive, that you are looking to pass on, by all means, we welcome you passing on that information if that's something that we can act on. So I think in essence, we have got the means of receiving that information. What this risk-based visiting schedule will do will ensure that we are catching those that might or could have the potential to slip through the net.
Thank you, Chair. Does that work the same way with the fictitious tenancies that's been mentioned in there as well?
In terms that would be reliant on information being shared with us to identify those, yes, it would be the same basis of sharing information and information being given to us to identify those, yes.
And do we ask our town centre managers to inform us of that intelligence as well, and keep an eye out whether businesses are opening, closing, and if there is fictitious tendencies or if they suspect something, notify our officers to go and inspect the premises.
Yes, they would share that information with the revenues and benefits team. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think it's important that we have as much up-to-date business intelligence as we can, because that actually feeds into the next agenda item. Might just result in less write-offs going forward. Right, this is for noting. Everybody happy with that? Thank you. Agenda item 9, collection and write-offs. Tracy.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report before you this evening is twofold: to provide an update on the debts written off under delegated powers, and to seek committee approval for write-off of debts that are above £10,000. All write-offs, whether they've already been approved under delegations or presented to you this evening, are in line with the existing corporate debt policy, and now obviously the corporate debt policy that was on previous agenda item. I'll just briefly take you through the report. So the table at 2.1 sets out the position relating to prior year's bad debts, for which there is a provision. It therefore details the provision at the beginning of the year and how much has been written off under delegations by myself if below £5,000, and by myself and the committee chair if between £5,000 and £10,000. It then presents the remaining balance on the provision. The table at 2.2 shows the amounts written off relating to the current year, and obviously there's no bad debt provision for current year's debt. We only ever write off current year's debt in exceptional circumstances. Well, we only write off any debt in exceptional circumstances, but it has to be pretty exceptional to be written off a current year's debt. Section 3 covers council tax. Section 4 covers business rates. There are 4 debts relating to business rates that are over £10,000 for committee approval. 3 cases relate to companies which are insolvent, and 1 case is statute barred, which means that the debt is no longer recoverable. Section 5 relates to housing. Section 6 relates to housing benefit overpayments. We'll start to see less and less of these as benefit recipients transfer to universal credit, which will be managed, which is managed by the Department of Work and Pensions. There is 1 of these housing benefit overpayment debts for committee approval, and that is where the recipient is deceased and there's no estate to recover the debt from. And then finally, Section 7 is in relation to sundry debtors, and there are no debts in relation to that for committee write-off. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before I open it up, I've got 4 speakers at the moment. I've got a question, clarification really. It's on page 61. It's the table at the top of that page. The provision, and then there's brackets for each provision there and the remaining balance at the end of that table. What is that money and where does it sit?
So the provision is a deduction that we, as so if I take the example of council tax, we collect £38 million in council tax on behalf of ourselves and the preceptors. We take a deduction for bad debts, assumed bad debts, from that gross amount of council tax, and then the council. So everybody pays a little bit of their share, if you like, of that bad debt. That's not solely our money, so it belongs to our preceptors. We hold that provision based on an estimate of of how many of the debts we think will go bad. We hold that money in our accounts as as cash. So in reality, Chair, we will use that. That cash will be sat in our banks and used as part of our working capital, as part of running the council.
And is that put in on an annual basis?
We either top it up or reduce it on an annual basis based on the estimate of outstanding debt and how much we think may go bad in the future.
Okay, thank you. Right, Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding again that table 2.1, obviously I understand that you've got provision in there and we're holding that, and that's the 4 preceptors, county council, this council, fire service and police. And then you've got the write-offs. So the write-offs, especially council tax, non-domestic rates, that's write-offs for our share of the council tax and their share of the council tax, and it's the whole lot, it's not just ours.
Yeah.
So that, say the first one, the council tax in the second column, 103,942, our share of that write-off would be a lot less than that actual figure. But then we've got all 5 of those columns added together, which makes a significant amount of money. So how much of that write-off would this council actually be losing?
Perhaps, Chair, if we can carry on with the questions, might be able to give a rough estimate based on our precept share of council tax and MDR, if that's okay, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Councillor Bentley?
No, I just want to know how much this council is actually not collecting, and whether it's a significant enough amount to actually possibly employ somebody to chase that debt, rather than just write it off every year, because every year we sit here and write things off. And I should think over the amount of time I've spent in this council, the sum must be tremendous.
There is a certain inevitability about write-offs.
Oh, I understand that, yes.
Yes. I'll go to the next speaker while Tracy and Bev are working on that one. Councillor Walter.
Thanks,
It's an interesting paper, but let us put things in perspective. This is after COVID. My memory serves me right, that the government said during the COVID campaign not to pursue hard businesses and people in social housing. That must have some effect on this, because if you don't pursue them at the time, they tend to forget that they owe the money. It's more difficult then to chase the debt. So I wonder how much this is actually because of government instruction not to pursue. That's one question. And could perhaps Mr. Gill answer, why is this company, this person statutory barred? Why can't we pursue them? What reason is given why we can't pursue it?
Mr. Gill?
Thank you, Chair. The reason that we've gone to Councillor Walter is a little
Thing called the Limitation Act of 1980, which sets out the timescales in which debts can be pursued. And the general rule is that if the debt is more than 6 years old and no action has been taken on it, and by action that means either proceedings issued or a liability order, then we're not allowed to pursue it.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have an answer, Tracy, on the government's wish that we didn't pursue debt too vigorously after COVID?
So I would need to go back and analyse some data to be able to respond to that fully. That may well be a possibility, Councillor Bolter. I mean, the housing write-offs that have been taken forward so far this year, we've not written off any current housing rents debts. The debts that we've written off relate to previous years. I would need to, like I say, we need to go back and analyse the data to be able to respond to that point specifically, to say which of the just under £28,000 worth of housing rents debt that has been written off may be related to that government instruction. I can certainly explore that for you and report back on that.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a figure for Councillor Bentley yet?
Almost, is that?
143k.
So we're looking at about, of those debts listed at 2.1, sorry, of the amounts that have been written off at 2.1, we're looking at roughly about £143,000 relating to income that this council was due to receive. I think what I would make clear is that these debts go back a number of years. And I think I would need to do some more analysis to be able to report to you on, I think, to enable an informed judgment in answer to your question, I think is what I'm saying, because what we would need to do is look at historical analysis of the debts that have been written off over a period of time and whether that would be economically advantageous in terms of, you know, the cost of an FTE. And it's also working on the assumption that all of the debts are recoverable. And clearly, in the case where former debtors are deceased and there is no estate, those debts are just not recoverable. There are other circumstances where businesses have gone into liquidation or dissolved. Again, those debts are not recoverable in law. And there are, you know, various other manner of reasons where actually recovery, you know, we've hit a dead end and we're not able to recover that debt, regardless of whether we had, you know, a number of additional FTEs working to that cause. You know, we just wouldn't be able to do that. So I don't feel like I can give you enough information for you to reach a conclusion on that question this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. Thank you for that. Those debts that Councillor Bentley has highlighted, they've not all accumulated within 1 year, have they? This is over a period of many years that have now reached this stage. So I think it would be wrong to take it as a snapshot of 1 year, more an accumulation of... You can come back?
Yeah, I just think going forward we need to not allow this sort of thing to mass up and look at it on a yearly basis, because businesses wouldn't allow that amount of write-off because it destroys businesses. The business I work for, I know it's a big multinational corporation, but they have a complete department just dedicated to debt recovery because they have to keep the cash flow going. So I'm just wondering what the yearly basis going forward would be, and whether it would be actually viable to put somebody in there just chasing that debt all the time.
Tracy?
I think, again, just picking up Councillor Charlesworth's point, which is that, you know, some of these debts are a number of years old, and some of these debts are 10 years old that you're presented with this evening. So I think that is something to bear in mind, and a consideration for the forward plan going forward is to have this report timetable on a frequent basis, and you know, that information brought to committee. There has been a build-up of write-offs, so we are, you know, clearing things out now, and this. You will not see debts being written off at this level on a continuous basis going forward. There has been a period of time before these write-offs, certainly above £10,000, have been brought to committee. So we are dealing with those and moving forward. But obviously the debts that you are seeing are the consequence of workload that in some cases is 10 years old.
Councillor Lillycalf.
Thank you, Chair. I think Mr Gill probably has answered my question. What I want to know is how old has the debt got to be before you actually write it off?
David?
Thank you, Chair. It all depends on the circumstances, because you may have a debt that Mrs Bingham
intimated that we don't write debts off in year unless it's exceptional. You could have a debt that arises this year where somebody has died with no estate, and therefore there is no money available. And in those circumstances, it would be appropriate to write that debt off as soon as possible. Councillor Bentley mentioned about the debts that are coming through. There's a fine balance in enforcing a debt, because certainly
with businesses, you have to be mindful that the action that you can take can actually tip the business over the edge and force it into administration. So you've got to
try to achieve a balance with them, because sometimes it's said getting something is better than getting nothing. So quite often officers will be working with those companies to try and reach an arrangement with them so that they can continue to trade, so they can continue to employ people without pressing the nuclear button of making them go into
administration.
So,
but
the bottom line, if there is a debt that you've done nothing with for 6 years, so you've not chased that person, you've not got any action on the account, court order, then the law says you cannot pursue it.
That's helpful.
Councillor Geoffrey Campbell.
It's sort of on the same theme. The question I was going to ask is, how does a debt become statute barred, which you explain if you do nothing, I think you said 7 years. I just wondered, perhaps it's here, I can't see it, how much of these debts were statute barred, and how much are they for? That's my first question. My second question is, I keep on hearing rumours, which I don't believe. Is there any pattern in the write-offs that our officers can detect? Are there any certain sort of businesses that regularly or irregularly avoid paying it, and do certain people pop up as directors at different times? I'm just wondering if we've detected any patterns.
So in response to your question around statute bar, we do have that data, and we'll be able to get that for you and report back to you based on the write-offs that have been taken forward under allegations, and then also the write-offs that are presented here this evening. Obviously, that's in the report. If you wanted that information, I can provide that outside of the meeting and forward that on to you that. In terms of the anecdotes of business owners, dissolving a business and then popping up elsewhere, I'm not aware of any. There haven't been any that have been brought to mine or senior leadership team's attention, but I do know from revenue practitioners that it does happen. It's a well-trodden path in terms of businesses doing this. So I have no doubt that the team would bring that to our attention if that was the case.
I'm sorry, I wonder if you, because I'm not an accountant, can you point out anywhere an indication which of the statute barred amount of debt in this lot here?
No, I can't. I can provide that to you separately in terms of some more data. There's one statute barred case presented, which is one of the non-domestic rates, so paragraph 4.1. So there's 4 non-domestic rates debts that are over 10,000.
I'm sorry, on what page?
4.1 on page 62. And one of those debts is statute barred.
Because I'm not after us getting blood out of a stone, but what I think would concern me is and I know you've got to pay somebody to do it, but if we haven't got enough staff and stuff has become statutorily barred, which need not be statutorily barred, it's not going very well.
I know I understand your point, because the point is we don't want to be in this statute barred situation. That takes roughly 6 years to come to fruition. So what those statute barred write-offs have been at least 6 years in the making. Does that make sense? So so this is why I would refer to the assurances of the collection rate action plan. The actions that we're taking here and now are about collection of current year's debts, and of course prior years, to the point that it is recoverable, to ensure that in the future we are not in a position where we're writing off statute barred. We're always going to be in that position in some cases. That's normal.
When you can't get blood from a stone, then.
But yeah, I mean, if you'd like that data in terms of the statute barred status of the debts that have been written up in the report, then we can supply that separately.
I think certainly for the future, that would be of interest to members. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hack.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of my questions have been answered. I was going to ask how much statutory debt are we talking about, and then do we pursue the estates of deceased in terms of the debts that's been there? We do. Okay, that's that. And I know Councillor Lauder mentioned that due to government instructions, we were somewhat restrained in collecting our debt during COVID. Do you have data that tells us whether the amount of debt that that's gone bad during COVID is similar to pre-COVID years, or has it gone up by a considerable amount? If you don't have that data,
I don't have that data, but yeah, I can supply that.
That's fine.
Councillor Bolton.
Thank you. In previous years, we've actually had a time scale of debts, how long this money's been owed, whether it's 1 year, 3 years or 5 years. That would help us to understand the report when you come to these write-offs. I mean, some might be recent, some might be 3 years old, some might be 5 years old. But it'd be nice on that report to do that again, so we know how old some of these debts are. I mean, Tracy mentioned one 10 years old. You know, we'd like to know how many are sort of in these time scales. That's possible, without putting in too much work, but.
Is that reasonable, Tracy?
We can look at the provision of some of that information. I think ultimately I would challenge back to say, will it change the outcome? It won't change the outcome of the debts that I would have written up under delegations, and it likely won't be able to change the outcome of debts that are presented to committee for write-off. And to that end, if it doesn't change the outcome, is it relevant information to the decision that's before you?
Yes, it is, because the due diligence as others charged with governance, we need to know what debts have not been pursued over what period of time. As a member, we need to know. If the officers haven't been chasing debts for 5 years, we need to know. And this report doesn't tell us that. These might be 1 year old or 3 years old or 10 years old, but we need to know.
I think we'll leave that one there. I think Tracy's right. We are where we are. And clearly things have got to change.
Yeah.
And we've got to improve on our write-offs and debt collection procedures. Tracy recognises that, so do I. I think we all recognise that. But I think looking back, it's not going to change manifestly what's here. I think Tracy and the team understand why these write-offs have happened, but I think we need to move forward. I've got one more speaker, and that's Councillor Boyce. No, it's not. It's Councillor... Sorry, Councillor Boyce. Councillor Lloydell.
Very quickly, talking about statute barred, does it help if you go to 64, page 64? It says statute barred 67, that's the number of cases. The write-ups is 34,500. Is that what we've been asking for?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Lloyd. Sorry, I think Councillor Corcoran asked the question. I was probably thinking at headline level, looking at the table that's at paragraph 2.1. Sorry, it is. I actually did write this report, and apologies because I've slept about 14 times since, but yeah, for each individual council tax, business rates and so on, the information is contained there in terms of the debts that have been written off. Apologies, do you have that information? I do apologise.
Sorry, I've seen it somewhere.
Thank you for that. And finally, Councillor Boyce.
Well, thank you, Chair. Just on the issue of statutory barred debt, putting it simply, I think it's unacceptable that any debt is statutory barred, and therefore, I think as a policy, we should adopt the fact that no debt will ever be allowed to become statutory barred. If it means it's written off beforehand, fine. At least it means we've dealt with it. But simply allowing a debt to run out of time is not acceptable.
Okay, thank you. Right, last speaker. Recommendation is that we note the contents of the report and approve the non-domestic rates and housing benefit overpayment write-offs that are above 10,000. I'm moving the report. Seconder.
I'll do that tonight.
Councillor Lloydell, all those in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. Agenda item 10 is the approval of garage management, housing allocations and repairs and maintenance policies. Who's doing this one? Chris Eyre.
Thank you, Chair. So this report seeks the committee's approval to bring into effect an updated housing allocations policy and a garage management policy, and to adopt a new repairs and maintenance policy. The repairs and maintenance policy is a new policy which we prepared in order to meet our legislative and regulatory requirements, and to respond to tenant needs and to improve tenant satisfaction with the homes in which they live. The housing allocations policy and garage management policies are both existing policies which have been updated to reflect current requirements, and the key changes are set out in the report, in the tables of the report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Bolter.
I think I've got 7 questions, Chair. So I'll take it slowly.
Let's do them one at a time so we don't confuse the officer.
Yeah, okay. On page 19, nominations, it doesn't say in there we have nomination rights to some housing association, properties that we assist in building. So that ought to be somewhere in that policy. Nomination rights.
Is that a question?
Statement.
It is a question, yes.
You're asking why isn't it there?
Yeah, why isn't it there?
Can you answer that, Chris?
So, Chair, it's simple as the nomination rights. We get 100% nomination rights on all new build properties, and then thereafter, you will agree with the housing association what those rights are, whether it's a 75% on lets after the first let or 50%. At the moment, we are planning on going back into negotiation with our RP, with the landlords, to renegotiate our nomination arrangements. Just one thing that I would like to say, though, is that most, if not all, housing associations will advertise their available to let properties through our Home Connections website. So although the nomination agreements that we've got with the providers may be out of date, we are looking at updating those. And as I say, housing associations will routinely advertise their vacant properties on our website anyway.
Thank you for that. When they are updated, can you come back to members, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Bill?
Second question.
Your microphone on.
Sorry, yes. On the application form, it says here online. A lot of our residents aren't able to do it online. Can we insert in there that customer service will actually do it for them if they can't do it online? And the report it just says online only.
the application process is an online process where people have been identified as they can't access the internet or do struggle with that. And we do make those special arrangements to support people to make an application. So that's standard operational procedures that we've adopted anyway.
The point is, it doesn't say so in the policy.
It needs to.
It needs to.
Okay, we can do that.
Okay. Move on now to more technical things. At page 24, 1843, ready to move on. A bit concerned about that. It might say that independent accommodation would now be appropriate. That's a bit woolly, that one. I don't know quite how you can tighten that up. Because the state ready to move on is a set bit in legislation. Okay? So that, I don't know how that fits in with legislation, whether we can alter that in any way, shape or form. But I think it might be helpful. What we don't want is a big influx of people saying we're ready to move on. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, so this part of the policy refers to people who are in supported accommodation. So they may have drug and alcohol issues, or they're in hostels of some kind and receiving support. And what tends to happen is, for a period of time, they will be in these hostels, and then their key workers will decide that person is ready to move on into or to look at being offered permanent accommodation. At that point, the key worker will contact us to talk about that, and then make those. We will then make their application a live application so that they're able to bid for properties. So the work that we do is is in conjunction with the person's key workers and support network.
Right, but will that support continue when they've moved on? The question I'm asking, because what we don't want is people to move on and they're left high and dry with no help.
In an ideal world, yes, that support would continue, and there are some people receive support for a period of time, but it's not an indefinite given that people will receive that support. Unfortunately, that's the reality of what we work in social housing now, is that the support the support resources are quite limited, and they tend to go to those in the most priority need.
Exactly, that's the problem, is that we provide the accommodation, and after a period of time we have the problems with the people who have moved in if they've not got support from various agencies. So that's a bit that concerns me, is that support not there at the beginning, but a few months down the line support disappears, and the housing section is left with a problem to manage, without resources to manage it. Anyway,
yeah. As I say, Chair, people do receive an element of floating support, but it's not for an indefinite period. Unfortunately, these, we will support people as best we can, because it's within our, it's to our benefit if we can help people sustain their tenancies, but it's not always possible. That's the reality, I'm afraid.
Okay, and the next question is on page 25.
Microphone, please.
Page 25. emergency welfare needs, if you go down to the last bullet point, the young person placed in care as a child of the County Council and who wishes to live in the borough of Oakley and Wixton, difficulties securing settled accommodation, the council and all options have been exhausted. So in other words, if the County Council will place this, it says here, child, so this is somebody under 18 years of age, who we cannot legally give a tenancy to. We can't give a tenancy to anyone under 18 years of age unless the law's changed. So who is actually the tenant? Is it the County Council, the tenant, paying the debt, paying the rent? Or who is it? Because you can't charge anyone under 18 rent and that no property.
That's correct. You look for the county council or a nominated person for that child to act as a guarantor. So if in theory, if that tenancy falls into rent arrears, then you would sue the guarantor for those rent arrears. Likewise, if there was antisocial behaviour issues or an abandonment tenancy, it would be through the guarantor that we would look at not necessarily taking action, but working with the guarantor to make that tenancy work and to resolve any issues associated with it.
Thank you. Next one, Bill.
That'll do for now, Chair. Let's have a go.
Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one on page 40, ending a garage licence. We know that this council has aspirations to build and develop social housing for our residents who require that. But we need to do that on land that we own in order to keep our own costs down. And there's a great many garage sites that we have been looking at. But all I see in this is one sentence that says that the council can end a garage licence, and it's a little bit wishy-washy. I think it just needs to be beefed up a bit so that the council can definitely end a licence agreement on a garage. It's actually section 14.6, and directly below it, it's the complaints procedure that they can go through to dispute such a thing. I just think it's a little bit wishy-washy and needs beefing up a little bit so that this council, as and when it needs to, can actually end garage licences and develop that land as we need to provide homes for residents.
Thank you, Councillor Bentley. Before I ask Mr Gill to answer that, you can probably also answer where's 14.5.
Thank you.
So,
Sorry, thank you, Chair. With respect to the garages, there's two things. Firstly, with regard to a notice to quit, it is 7 days. There's no secure tenancy. A matter of law, you serve notice on somebody, give them 7 days notice, and that is it. This policy has built in a right of appeal, but in reality, what would happen is they'd probably be offered a garage somewhere else if we were choosing to build on that site. With regard to the garage sites, we're currently undertaking an asset review, and we are waiting for information from a firm of valuers and surveyors as to the value of various sites and the appropriate development of various sites, i.e. what could they be used for, and we're hoping that that's going to be back with us within the next month or so.
Thank you. Was there a 14.5, Chris?
There was, Chair. It's an error on my part. I just need to number that last point.
Okay, thank you. Right, any more questions, please? Councillor Hack. Councillor Hack.
Thank you, Chair. On page 16, it says review of the housing register, and if people don't reply within 14 days, they will be taken off the register. If they are successful in their appeal, do they get their place back in the queue, or do they have to go back on starting point again?
Chris?
Yes, Chair. If someone was successful in their review, we would reinstate their position as it was when at the time they were suspended or removed from the register, with no penalty.
Thank you. And on page 27, in advertising and bidding, it says online. Is that the only medium that bidding and advertising can take place? Do we have any other way that people can bid or see the properties being advertised?
So choice-based lettings is now firmly established, not only within Leicestershire, but countrywide, and most people are familiar with that. They will, when they join a housing register, they will bid online, and it's done through that medium. What we do offer for those people who, again, are vulnerable or have difficulties accessing the internet, we provide what's called an assisted bidding facility, in which the housing officer will place bids on behalf of someone. So, for example, we're currently working with an elderly tenant who's got no family, and she does struggle with the internet, and we are actively bidding for properties as they become available. And then if she's comes up on a match to be offered that property, we then contact her and have that discussion with her about the property.
Thank you, Chair. That was going to be my next question. That's useful to know. Thank you.
And the final speaker is Councillor Bolter.
Thank you. Apologies for missing this one out at the beginning. On page 5, 5.8, shelter supported accommodation. At the moment, it's 50 years of age. In this report, it says move to 60. Now, I've had difficulty renting some of our sheltered accommodation. What effect is that going to have on our lettings policy if we move it to 60? Got a number of people that are 50 years of age in our accommodation at the moment, move to 60, but we're going to have extra vacancies. Lots of us lose money.
Thank you for that. Before you answer it, Chris, can you tell us why that's been moved?
So the reason we've upped the age is there is quite a significant problem in our sheltered accommodation with younger people being in sheltered accommodation, and there is certainly a clash of lifestyles associated with people aged 50 mixing with people that are a bit older. So the reason we've done that is looking at protecting that sheltered environment. In addition to that, we've got very few sheltered accommodation designed for people 60 plus, and with the ageing population and more people, elderly people joining the register, we do need to kind of protect that accommodation level.
Entirely different piece if they can't be.
Can we review that, Chair, in 12 months' time? See how it's gone?
Yes, Chris, 12 months' time, can we have a look and see how that policy's working, please?
Yeah, I think that's a wise move. Yeah.
Thank you. Right, that was the last speaker. The recommendation is the council adopts and brings into effect the following policies that I've already mentioned. I'll move it. Seconder.
Does that include the amendments, Chair?
Can you specify those amendments, please?
Mr. Ball can most likely tell us what they were. Unless you want to go through them all.
I think I've got comments made on those specific requests to amend the policy.
Okay.
There has been no specific request for an amendment. I'm prepared to give you time.
No, it's all right. Carry on.
Mr. Gill.
I think probably the easiest thing, Chair, is that you move it with officers having the liberty to incorporate the comments that were made by members, which we can recover from the tape of the meeting and deal with it that way.
Okay, that sounds good. I've moved it. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Gamble. All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. Agenda item 11, Customer Experience Strategy and Action Plan. Trish Hatton.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. The purpose of this report is to ask members to approve the Council's Customer Experience Strategy and the Action Plan to go alongside this for the next 3 years, covering 23 to 26. The Customer Experience Strategy has been developed as part of our commitment to customer excellence and continuous improvement, and to set out plans to deliver our services, ensuring we meet the needs of our groups. An extensive consultation was carried out with our customers, staff members and other key stakeholders between 2nd November and the 23rd of December, with a great effort made to try and get the views of digitally excluded customers within the borough. All details of the responsive feedback can be found at Appendix 1. Customer feedback from the consultation has been used to direct and shape the strategy. One element of the consultation feedback showed that customers did miss our face-to-face contact and wanted to see this increased. The strategy outlines plans to increase our face-to-face access channels by introducing appointment hubs in each town centre and a reception point at the new council offices at Broxhill. It is estimated the net cost of this to be circa £15,000. Consultation feedback also highlighted some improvements needed on our website and the desire to improve our digital channels. The strategy sets out 4 key objectives, as outlined in the report and the strategy itself, and it will help us to provide responsive, high-quality service and continue to improve our standard of customer service across the council, whilst being informed by customer engagement and feedback. Thanks, Chair. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Keep it from the off. Just a few comments. I don't think there's a question in it. Very aspirational document. Explains why we're doing it, what we're potentially going to do. But the lack of detail and the lack of timeline concerns me. I want to know when this is going to be operational.
In the action plan, it gives an indication of which periods of the year that we're going to be doing certain things. In terms of the front-facing, which is the most popular thing that customers did in their feedback want to see improved, we'll be rolling out the appointment hubs in June in the 3 town centres. For 2 reasons, we can't do that any earlier. One being that obviously we need to get approval tonight from yourselves on this, and then we will draw the legal contracts and agreements up in the next month. Also, the 3 locations that we have worked in partnership with are already community hubs in the local areas in very central places, because we really want people to be able to use and access them. They have booking requirements, and June is the month that every single one of them can allow us to start this process. So they will start in June, and then obviously the reception itself will open with Broxhill once that opens as a building.
Thank you, Trish. Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. You mentioned a cost of £15,000 for appointment hubs. Is that just for renting the space in the 3 proposed hubs?
So the appointment hubs, we've managed to negotiate really good rates with the 3 community groups and areas that we're doing that in. We'll be actually contributing £600 just to each one of those. We're able to work in partnership with them, and they're really hopeful that, you know, they can help us fill the appointments as well. So that would be great. So we've actually done very well to negotiate quite reasonable rents for that, rather than paying an hourly room fee. We've come up with this agreement. The actual extra cost is the additional member of staff that will be doing the reception role at Broxhill. We have been able to use a saving from a budget previously that we've identified that we're using for artificial intelligence, our Alfie chatbot, online, which whilst it was, again, an aspirational idea and it did work to a degree, we found it was very resource intensive to actually work, and customers just weren't really using it. So the fact that that was coming to an end, we have identified some of the money for the reception role from that, but there is a gap, and that's what the majority of the £15,000 will pay for.
Okay, thank you.
That's probably just me. Anybody else on this? Councillor Hack.
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly, on page 97, 4.2, explore the use of virtual appointments. Why is it taking that long? It should be fairly straightforward.
It's really just to allow us time to roll out the appointment hubs within the team. We obviously have an election this year and the customer service team will be very busy taking calls around that time. We want to get the appointment hubs up and running and the reception out, which will involve training as well. It's just really to buy us a bit of time to make sure the process in which we'll do the virtual appointments and how we set that up and advertise that, we've got enough time to do it so it works.
Councillor Lloydell.
Yeah, just very quickly, again, thank you for the document. It's very succinct and everything else. The point is that the plan is for 23 to 26 3-year programme. Will there be stuck on it reports? Because any strategy or policy that needs to know it's working effectively. If not, there may be amendments going on the way. So will there be strategic reports coming through? More to hear, wasn't there?
So yeah, absolutely, I completely agree. And also with customer service comes technology, things like the pandemic can change customer demand. So I think we've learnt from that in the future. So whilst it is a 3-year strategy, it will be reviewed on a yearly basis and we will bring any changes or any suggestions to members for agreement.
Just you say yearly, with it being new, we need to be in a position where any changes might be significant between each year. So could I suggest that it's more regular than annual review? It might be, say, half yearly, perhaps. It might be something that's happening that needs to be changed too. So you probably might need member support to be able to move it forward rather than changing it, then we find out later.
Can I suggest, before you come in, Trish, I understand it'll come back through Service Delivery Committee, I think on an annual basis, but I also think we need to make use of the members' bulletin of any changes or issues that arise that we get notified as soon as possible. Thank you. Trish?
Absolutely, that's a great suggestion, Chair, and we can certainly take that forward. In terms of our plan is to report into service delivery in terms of statistics like we do for the whole of customer services. That will include the appointment usage, the types of appointments and the things that people are using us for. Equally, it will also report in the type of use for the reception and how that is working as well. We're gathering customer feedback. So absolutely, you can build that into service delivery committee and report on that. Biannually if you want us to do something, but we will be providing you with that data every quarter anyway. So if we try that first and if members want more information, we can go from there.
And I'm pretty sure that if residents are unhappy with an aspect of that service, they will be coming to, if any of us should be re-elected, be coming back through us, and we can certainly raise it with Trish or through the members' inquiry system. Yeah. Councillor Lily Kaufman.
Thank you, Chair. A very, very quick question. The hub in Oadby, where will that be?
So we're not in a position to tell you that right now, just because we have got to get the agreements drawn up and contracts signed. But I can assure you it's in a very central location in Oadby town centre. They're all in very central locations in the town centres, and I look forward to letting members know where they are. They're also very well used buildings, so that that was something we were very keen on. If we want the appointment hubs to work, we don't want to do them somewhere that people don't visit or people are not comfortable using. So we've kind of got involved with partners out there who are already running community hubs, and we're tying on our appointments to it to give it every opportunity to work.
Oh, it's not Wetherspoons. We don't want hubs in pubs.
Why not?
They are appropriate.
Councillor Boyce.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, just as an aside, I used to do a surgery in a pub, but that stopped some years ago. Purely on a governance issue, can we delegate to services full control of this policy, subject to any changes being within the budget? Because frankly, I don't see the point in it being dealt with in two places. It will be reported to services. It should be delegated to services for changes as long as it's within budget. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think that's a sensible proposition. Okay, any more speakers?
As Councillor in attendance but not present, if that's what you intend to do, then somebody in the room will need to move that and then get it seconded.
Councillor Bolter.
Mr Boyce's comments, he can't put forward, so I will put them forward on his behalf and hope that the committee support it. What did you say? Basically, it's going to services in future.
It doesn't need to come to two places, which makes absolute sense.
But it's on budget, and of course it will be on budget, won't it? Yes.
Of course it will.
Right, okay. I've moved it. We've had this. Councillor Bentley seconding it. All those in favour? Unanimous again, thank you. Agenda item 12, proposed empty home strategy. Mr Gill.
Thank you, Chair. The report summary sets out the purpose of the report, which is that a robust empty home strategy is an important element of the authority's private sector housing, revenues, housing and planning functions, and ensures a joint working approach to address empty homes within the borough. The report outlines how this will be enacted operationally, how resources will be allocated and how progress will be measured, along with outlining the changes from the previous strategy and the reasons for those changes. As you go through the report, members, it starts by setting out the strategic context in which the report has been prepared and the appropriate policies it relates to. Section 2 talks about why the strategy required a review, and in section 3, for the benefit of members, it sets out the proposed changes and the existing text and the justifications for the changes. As we go through, section 4 sets out the operation and resource implications and who will be involved in dealing with empty homes. Section 5 sets out the current figures relating to empty homes, and section 6 sets out how OWBC compares to other authorities. Then sets out at section 7 how the progress will be reported, and that will be reported through into services. And section 8 sets out the conclusion and recommendations. If members have got any questions, I'm quite happy to take them.
Councillor Bolter.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the table on page 73 is interesting, but it'd be more interesting if we knew how many properties have been empty for how many years in set periods of time. I mean, it's after 2 years empty, but some of the properties may be up to 10 years empty. I mean, it'd be nice to know how many are actually long-term empties, medium-term empties, and short-term empties. Information hasn't been given to us in the past like that.
I can certainly ask the officers involved if they can include that in the reports that come to services.
Well, it'd be nice for us to know how many, you know, and would you also include holiday lets as well?
A holiday let wouldn't fall within an empty property, it wouldn't fall within the definition.
Well, yes, yeah, but some of these properties aren't occupied very often.
But they're still occupied and they'll still be paying their council tax, and most of areas they have a premium for holiday lets as well. So if we're looking at long-term empty homes, i.e. those that are not being used whatever for any residential type of purpose, that is the ones that we should be concentrating on. If you wanted to address holiday lets, you would probably address it through a different policy, and you would certainly do it through council tax. I think one authority now has a premium of 300% on its holiday lets.
I just think, Chair, there's a growing tendency of holiday lets within Leicestershire. It may be worth officers looking at if it's financially viable to do that.
I pragmatic ways. I mean, I haven't seen any evidence of holiday lets in the borough. If somebody starts bringing them forward, I think then officers should take that into consideration. But until there's a real demand, I mean, officer time is precious as it is. I wouldn't want them chasing up possible lets that... I can't think of any, Bill.
Ross, Chair.
They may well then be picked up when we start looking at various areas within the borough in respect of extending the selective licensing scheme. Because, you know, if they're being let, already let, or whether they're let full stop, we should pick them up in that process.
Councillor Boyce.
Thank you, Chair. The borough actually benefits from a number of lets in the Stoughton Farm Park area, or about to. And I'm slightly mindful of the language. We need to be a little careful. We should set a policy for the whole borough. However, clearly those holiday lets are rateable now, and therefore, yes, we do have holiday lets within the borough, and yes, we do need to think about it.
Thank you, Mr. Boyce. Yes, and I understand it's 6 log cabins, 1 tent and 5 yurts. Sounds like fun. Okay, any more speakers? I'll move the recommendation, which is A and B. Seconder, thank you. Councillor Lily Kaufman. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Agenda item 13, the usual quarterly report on standards and ethical indicators. Mr. Gill.
Thank you, Chair. This relates to quarter 3. Within that quarter, there was 1 complaint received about a member, from a member. At the time the report was being written, the matter was under assessment. I can confirm that as a result of the assessment and in conjunction with one of the independent persons, that report was determined to be the cut and thrust of politics, and no complaint and no investigation to be conducted. The report further sets out all of the standard information, as the Chair has indicated, in respect of the performance indicators in relation to the Council's accounts, FOI, food safety, etc., etc. Happy to take any questions.
Anybody? No? Okay, I'll move the report. Seconder?
Move.
Thank you, Councillor Bolter. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Right, that nearly concludes the meeting. This is my last meeting as chair of this committee. We have elections in May. Who knows what will happen then? I'd just like to make the observation, this council gets criticised considerably by the opposition in terms of financial sustainability. I think it's notable that no opposition councillor has turned up at this meeting tonight. This is probably the most important committee of this council. I find it deeply disappointing that not all... I'm sure they may have good reasons not to be here, but I think that there's an absolute no-show. It's very disappointing and does no service to the residents of this borough. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.